everyone. My name is Ashley and this is my channel, Worth the Read, where we talk about books that are worth your time reading. It's been about almost 2 months since I shot my last video. A lot has been going on. We're still under quarantine, you guys. Everybody knows this. I live in Philadelphia, PA. Our governor extended the quarantine, so we're not being released until June. And mentally, I just have not been feeling doing any videos. So I'm pushing myself to get back to that. This is actually my April wrap up, the books that I read in April. I'm still reading. I just have not been motivated to make a video. So I guess I'm feeling the motivation again, and it is the end of May, but I have been reading in May, so this is my April wrap up, and then I'll do my May wrap up. So let's get right into it. For the month of May, I read 4 books. The first book I read, which we're going to talk about, is What My Mama Left Me by Renee Watson. Now, this is a book I purchased on Book Outlet, and this is one of 3 books that I had by Renee Watson. I have Piecing Me Together, and I have a book that she's collabed with someone else, Watch Us Rise. Now, I purchased all of these books off of Book Outlet, and this is the first out of the 3 books that I've purchased from her that I've read. And reading this book made me realize that I enjoy her like I enjoy Jason Reynolds. Like, I have purchased almost all of Jason Reynolds' book. That will be my goal with Renee Watson. This book, I give this book 4 stars. This was an excellent book. It's, I guess you can consider it YA. The main character's name is Serenity, and in the beginning, her mother dies. Now, this is one of those books where they tell you a tragedy, but they really don't tell you how it happened until you get further along in the book. And I appreciate that. It gives you some kind of suspense to wonder what really happened. Her mother doesn't just die. It's a tragic death. And it forces Serenity and her brother to live with their grandparents. And Serenity is very religious. Her grandfather is a pastor of a church, so of course her grandmother is the first lady of the church. And if you were raised in the church, you know that the first lady is probably more prestigious than the pastor, because honestly, the pastor just preaches, but the first lady tends to do everything in the church. And Serenity is very religious, and she battles with her religion and being a normal teenager. She wants to be a normal teenager, but she knows her walk with Christ will get her through the tragedies that she's faced. So her and her brother move into her parents' house, and her brother starts to demonstrate bad behavior. He's starting to act out, which for good reason. He has a reason to act out. He's been through this tragedy by losing his mother, and they don't quite know until later on what happens to their father. And she's battling, supporting her brother as a sister, and then being a parent figure for her brother, because she's technically all they have left. And I enjoyed this book. Again, I give it 4 stars. It was an excellent read. I suggest you read it. It will make you cry. It's if you have and I don't want to give it away, but if you have triggers to abuse and things like that, this will be a trigger for you. This may be a trigger for you. I read this book in maybe 2 days, because I only read at night. I'm working from home now, so I don't get the chance to read as much as I want to because I'm home. It's weird. You would think I would read more because I'm home, but my job has been stressing me out, y'all. I don't like my job. I don't like my job at all. Shh, don't tell anybody. But it took me no time to read this book. This book is maybe 250 pages. It's a quick read. If you are looking for a quick, well-written, diverse point of view read, What My Mama Left Me by Renee Watson. I highly suggest it. I was just like, wow, if this one is this good, then the one that she won all the awards for must be amazing. I need to read that as soon as possible. So that's my feelings about What My Mama Left Me. I really don't want to give you much detail about it because it'll be giving the whole story away. But if there's a tragedy that happens, a young lady ends up living with her grandparents and she's struggling to live a normal teenager life, like liking boys, and then she's struggling with her religion and her walk with God because of this tragedy and the secrets that she has to hold that have been heavy on her heart. Definitely get it. I suggest anybody to read this book. It's amazing. 4 stars, worth the read. This is one of the better books I've read this year, period. If you're new to my channel, you don't know this, but all my other Worth the Read family knows I select the books that I read off of my emotions and what I feel like I need or I'm missing or I want to read about based on my emotions. Now, since my birthday, which is March 21st, to like the second week in May, I have had no physical skin-to-skin contact with anyone. Not a hug from my dad, not a kiss, and nothing. And mentally, I was yearning for a love story, like some affection. So I decided to read the second book in the Jasmine Guillory series, and that was The Proposal. Now, this is the second book in, I think, a 4-part series. These books are connected, but not necessarily sequels or a trilogy to relate it to each other. There is a connection from book. So the first book was The Wedding Date, which I have here. This is the second book. And then after I finished reading the second book, I purchased the last 2. I give this book a 3.5 stars. And you guys know my rating is from 3 to 5 stars as far as the level of worth the read. I give it 3.5 stars. It's definitely worth your time reading. If you enjoyed The Wedding Date, which I love, I gave The Wedding Date 4.5 stars, I believe, you will enjoy this. It is not as good, of course, I'm giving it a lower rating as The Wedding Date, but it was enjoyable and it fulfilled the need of a love story for me. This book, actually, the best friend, Carlos, in The Wedding Date is the main character in this one. So they're connected, but it's nothing to do with the 2 main characters from the first book. Carlos is a Hispanic male, and he goes to a baseball game where a young lady, Nikki, gets proposed to over the Jumbotron by this guy she's only been really friends with benefits, dating for a couple months, and he proposes to her. Nikki's Afro-American, and the guy who proposed to her is white. If you don't know, Jasmine Guillory books usually have interracial couples. And she turns the guy down. And she's just like, first, we don't know each other well enough. Why are you proposing to me? And the guy, her boyfriend, makes a big stink about this and leaves her at the baseball game to sit there and be embarrassed. And Carlos and his sister kind of save her. She's about to be interviewed by camera, and they kind of swoop in and just like, hey, how you been? Haven't seen you in a long time. Let's go talk, kind of situation to get her out of it. And they end up becoming friends and developing a relationship. Now, if you know Jasmine Guillory's work, most of the time, the relationship starts off as we are just going to do this as friends with benefits situation. But then someone falls in love with the other. And again, this is the same formula for The Proposal. They started off, Nikki and Carlos, as friends with benefits, and they both were on their page. Like, they both were like, we're busy. Nikki is a freelance writer, and she has a lot going on. And then the reverse. Carlos ends up falling in love. And you get their story and how they work through that, and will they end up together, will they not? This was a good read. It is not as steamy as I would say as The Wedding Date, but I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading her next book in this series. And 3.5 stars. I would say a little more than 3.5, like closer to 4 stars. The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory is definitely worth your time reading. The next novel that I read in the month of April is The Dead Girl Society by Michele. Again, I needed a mystery, I guess. That's why I selected this book. I give this book 3.5 stars. It is a good young adult mystery novel. The main character's name is Hope. She suffers from cystic fibrosis, which is a lung disorder. Your lungs end up building up with mucus and it's hard for you to breathe. You have to kind of beat on your body to break it down so that your body can process it, and you're constantly taking nebulizers and breathing treatments to help you breathe. This can limit your physical activity, but you just have to monitor it. Her mom is so deathly afraid of her dying that she kind of keeps her locked up in the house. And one day she gets an email inviting her to participate in an activity that they tell you could end up dead by doing this. But it will be an adventure. She'll be able to live life and get out of the situation she's in. What I loved about this book is it starts immediately. It's no waiting for her to get this letter. It's the first chapter, the first couple pages, she's getting this email and she's just trying to decide if she's going to meet, because it asks her to meet at a warehouse. She gets the email, she's trying to decide if she's going to meet at this warehouse. And that's how it starts off. I love books that just jump right into it. It's not a need to spend 2 and 3 chapters to get into the plot. Let's go. And this book gave me that. I appreciate that. Now, she has a best friend that she's secretly in love with. If it wasn't for, that has to be. It's a young adult novel. It's always that in a young adult novel. So that's a trope. But she's secretly in love with, and she decides to accept the challenge of doing this Dead Girl Society. And it's like a thrill, adventure kind of group. But then things start to get funny. And people are getting seriously hurt in doing these challenges and dying, and then there's consequences, and then people in her life she suspects that someone in her life is behind this all. And she suspects her sister, she suspects the most popular boy in school that happens to start liking her, and during the time of her during this pledging process. And it's a mystery because she's trying to figure out who's behind this Dead Girl Society. The incentive to do the challenges is a $100,000 reward. And financially, she needs the money. The first challenge that she completed, she received $10,000 worth of medicine that she needed, that her mom is struggling to pay for her medicine. So she has a true incentive to continue to do the challenges, where someone who may not could be like, I'm not doing this. This is crazy. People are getting hurt. I'm over this. I'm out. I'm not going to tell nobody because it's consequences, but I'm done. She stays in it because of that reason. She really needs the money, and that's it. This is a good book. It starts from the beginning. It gets the rolling, and it's adventure the whole time. It's never... Okay, so let me take that back. I give this book 4 stars. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I really did enjoy this book. I did not put it down. I read this book in 3 days. Is challenge after challenge. And then once the mystery of you starting to unravel what's really happening. I want to tell you, but I want to tell you. Okay, so there's a girl who dies in her school who commits suicide. And is connected to the Dead Girl Society. I think I told you too much, but it's good. It's a good book. 4 stars for Dead Girl Society. I went on Goodreads to see what people were giving it, which I tend to do before I read a book. And it's kind of mixed reviews. Some people loved it, some people hated it. I enjoyed it. 4 stars, definitely worth your time reading. If you get a chance to get this, I got this from, there's the red dot, Book Outlet, of course. So if you find it on Book Outlet, it's really inexpensive and it's an enjoyable read. Dead Girl Society. The last book that I read for the month of April was The Black Volta by PKJ. This book, guys, I give 2.5 stars. Unfortunately, I did not enjoy this book at all. It was entirely too long. And okay, let's get into what it's about. This book has 2 main characters, Carlos and Liz. Liz is from Africa. She's an African transplant who lives in the United States. Carlos is from Puerto Rico, who in his teenage years moved to Africa to avoid some trouble that he's been getting in. So his dad sends him to Africa on this mission trip, and he ends up falling in love with Africa, going to like high school, college, I think it was, in Africa, and then he starts teaching. And then one day something happens and he makes this great escape from Africa. Whereas though Liz worked hard in school and she received a scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh, and she's the head nurse of a hospital in Pennsylvania. And the thing about it is Liz, what I did not like about this book, which is something that is culturally why I didn't like it, but it's very prevalent in the African culture. Liz is a pushover when it came to her family. Liz is taking care of her mother, who's lived with her, who was the reason her marriage collapsed. She's taking care of her sister, her younger sister, and her daughter in Africa. She's taking care of her brothers. She's taking care of her father. So financially, she's stretching herself financially to take care of all these people, and nobody's appreciative of it, and she's just expected to do it. Her mother just expects her to do it. And throughout the whole book, I'm just like, I can't take this. Like, I would have told everybody to kiss my behind. I'm not paying for nothing. Get a job or starve. But that's the American in me. Again, it's a cultural difference. And Carlos is at the age where he's taking a sabbatical from work. He's gotten a divorce. He has 2 grown sons that are in school, and he just needs a break from life. So he decides to return back to Africa after he left because of this tragic thing he had done, and just wander across Africa and go back to the area of Ghana where he was living, and hence the name of the book, The Black Volta, which is a river and that runs through Ghana. And he's kind of just hanging and just trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life. And he decides to go back to Africa to amend his actions that he did, I guess, when he was a teenager. It's really, he's just a gypsy. He's just wandering from place to place. He really doesn't have a purpose. He just wants to get away. He's tired of corporate life, and he decides to travel. How they meet. Liz actually takes off of work and goes back to Africa to start the process of building a house on some land that she has, because she's paying for her sister's apartment. Her sister has her boyfriend living there, and she's paying for food, groceries, utilities. She's had enough. So she just wants to build this house so they can live in the house. She doesn't have to pay rent and anything, but because she keeps on trying to get the house built, but she's not physically there, the contractors and stuff are stealing from her. So she ends up running into Carlos and convinces him to stay in Africa and live free in her townhouse and stay in her room and watch her sister and go daily to the grounds to monitor the construction. And he agrees. And it's just a long book of back and forth of the same thing. Carlos trying to figure out how to amend what he did in Africa, and Liz being run over by her family constantly and kind of neglecting her own real responsibility, which is her son. I didn't enjoy the book. I was just like, okay, is this going to be over? We kind of find out what Carlos did in the beginning, and he's on a journey to find the people that he affected. He does. Okay, then he ends up running into a Asian woman, and gets in this relationship with her from a distance and then ends up moving to like Hong Kong. It just wasn't, it was okay. Hence the 2.5 stars. I really didn't enjoy it that much. So that's it. Black Volta. If you want to read it, read it. If you don't, I don't think you're missing anything. That's just my opinion, and that's how I took it. That is my April Better Late Than Never wrap up. I'm currently reading Black Girls Must Die Exhausted and A Baby Makes Two, which is the sequel to Black Girls Die Exhausted. And again, I told you guys this book was literally hand in hand with my life and where I am in my life. And the second one is as well is really scary. I guess it's very clear that a lot of women are single women in our age, in my age range, I'm 35, are going through the same thing. So that's what I'm currently reading. Guys, if you have read any of the books that I've talked about today, comment, like, subscribe, talk to me about it in the comments. And let me know what you think. I hate when I don't like a book, but I'm going to be honest on my page, and I did not like Black Volta. It was not worth the read. I'm glad I did it on Audible, because if it was an actual book in hand, I would have never finished it, period. It wouldn't have been finished. It would have been tossed a long time ago. So the benefit of having an Audible is you'll push yourself more to read it, because you can listen to it as you're doing other things. I hope you guys are taking care of your mental health during this stay at home journey that we're all on. I have been decluttering my house. I've been throwing things away. I've been trying to connect spiritually and mentally to continue to be positive in this situation, because that's all we can do. We really don't have a choice, even though some Americans believe that we should have a choice. And that's just American privilege right there, huh, guys? We just do what we want to do, regardless of if it's going to harm any and everyone around us. But that's here nor there. Have a great one. You will see me soon, I promise. Sending love from Worth the Read. Peace out, guys.